Welcome back to the Specialist Scoop by Aria Finance. I have got Kerry Flahive, who is the founder and MD of Graphene Legal.
Yes.
Welcome, Kerry. Lovely
Thank
to have you on.
Thank you.
So tell us a bit about your journey. Tell us a bit about graphene, what you're doing in the market. Love to hear a bit about what you've done and how you've got here.
So in terms of myself, I actually studied engineering at university, believe it or not. Was a bit of a science geek and did a year out in industry. And during that time, there was a bit of litigation surrounding one of the products. So I went to a bit of a legal fair and just was really taken in by it. It seemed really interesting. Whilst the medical and science side interest me, it was too slow. So to get a medical product out to market, it takes years and years, whereas actually the legal side seemed really on it and fast paced, which is what I love. Not quite as fast paced sometimes as we always want it currently.
Yeah.
But so I then decided I was going to convert from engineering to law, and I did that.
Was that an easy process?
It was hard, but I was always somebody that didn't mind to study. I kind of didn't mind the academics because I did have the goal in mind.
How many years did that add on to the...
So it was 4 years because I did a master's in engineering.
Wow.
And then I converted into law.
That's amazing.
Which was the PGDL, and then I did the LPC. Then I got offered, I actually went for interviews at lots of places. I was interviewed and invited because I got a first in my degree.
Wow.
And people in London were inviting me there and different things, but I went down and it was very clear to me that at that time I was not, didn't talk the legal language, didn't talk the finance language. I was very much a scientist. So I kind of then went away and applied myself. And in the end, I did actually get offered 3 training contracts and went forward with Halliwell's, which is a whole other conversation itself. My boss had seen what was coming and he actually put me on secondment at a lender called Davenham Trust. And they, like many lenders at that time, were having a lot of issues with back book problems, shortfalls, prof negligence. And he put me in there on a secondment. So as a newly qualified lawyer, I had my own client. I was then headhunted by DWF, which is another large law firm. And they said to me, we are going to replicate what has happened for you at Halliwell. So you can come to us under our umbrella, but basically you're going to be seconded in to the client. Went to DWF and then we did the same thing at Davenham. And then I was then called by Henry Moser to Get the Money. And he called me direct and just said, have you heard of me? I've heard.
And how did he come across you? Do you know?
Yeah, I do actually. It's quite a funny story. So basically what had happened, a team had sold a recovery element for a lender into Henry. So we're going to come into your business. We're going to help you with all the problems, which every lender was suffering at the time because of the climate. And this is our recovery team. And the recovery team is X 100,000. Henry being Henry obviously knows what he's doing, thought, who is actually doing this recovery? Who's the person doing it? Right, it's the lawyer behind this. So he just reached out to me direct. So unbeknown to me, somebody had packaged me up as a team to sell me into Henry. And I didn't know. This person then got earshot that Henry had contacted me direct.
Yeah.
And then wanted to bring me in. Come and have a look. Come and have a look at the spreadsheet.
Great for you, though.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I went in to Henry, had a couple of interviews, met with Mark Goldberg, and came out and spoke to my dad and said, I literally feel like I've been on X Factor because, he just blew every single offer I had at the time. I mean,
that's incredible.
the law firm I was with at the time, they were kind of saying, we can develop you. We're going to send you on these insolvency courses. We're going to do this. We're going to do that.
This was just quick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And but the law firm, unfortunately, law firms work, the big traditional law firms very much now work on formulas. Everything is so rigid. What can people earn? They don't look at the actual individual and see, right, what has that girl actually brought in? What are her connections? What are her client bases? How's she performing against her peers? I was just told, well, you're already ahead of your peers. So, we can't go any further. We can't, offer or increase your package. We can just develop you. It didn't, for
Didn't
me, I just
excite
thought,
you.
no, this is too
You knew
rigid.
your own worth.
Yeah. So, went to Together and had a great time there, worked directly with the top directors, had great experience. We built a recoveries team there, recovered a lot of problems, but also I was involved in front end transactions, when a deal came in that maybe didn't fit the box, we'd speak about different ways around
So
it.
just for the benefit of anyone listening then, so your initial experience in the property law side was on the back end as opposed to helping deals to complete and get over the line and doing the conveyancing.
Yeah.
So you worked with lenders if a loan went wrong. So if a lender had to take possession of a property and they were trying to recover their money, if it got complicated, you would get involved.
Exactly.
Right. So then the value then that you would add at the front end was almost like the benefit of hindsight in advance, because okay, it's a different loan and it's a different scenario, but they're saying this has come up at the front end.
Yeah.
If that becomes a problem, do you foresee that being an issue at recoveries at the end? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I've just seen the time that so my start was Together in maybe 2010. And obviously I've been part of the lending world very closely and worked with a lot of lenders. The development I've seen, obviously not just from what I've seen when things go wrong, but just through like improving processes and procedures and tweaking the documents. And it, I am a very commercial individual, and I think I've got both sides because of working with lenders. So even though you would probably think, oh, this girl's going to be a deal stopper, she's, seen it when it all goes wrong. It's not about that. It's about like, how can we get this right? So yes, that might be a problem, but actually we can mitigate it by X, Y, Z. And what I would say there is sometimes when people don't understand, or people think you're being difficult or obstructive with the borrower solicitor, and we're all on the same team here. We want to protect the lender's interest, but actually it also works for the borrower purchaser, because if they get stuck with a piece of land that's landlocked or has some encumbrance
perhaps the lawyer acting on their side hasn't spotted it. So sometimes, two heads are better than one. And this is definitely something that I want to come back to, your experience and what you see go wrong and how you can mitigate it. But will you just take us to today? How did you get to the point where you've gone and set up
sorry.
Graphene?
So I got to, so we're Together, amazing experience. And I was offered to head up the law firm that does all the work for Together. And I said to myself, if I'm going to do this, and obviously setting up a law firm is a lot of responsibility. You really have to know the people that you're in business with. I'm going to do this myself, which was huge. I remember.
You didn't want to be tied to anyone. You wanted to be able to be free and
So
independent.
what was really the universe looking after me, or, me just being very, very lucky, was whilst I was at Together, Henry and the team would also recommend me. So they'd say, to a client or somebody who was having trouble, use Kerry on that case, like he'll sort it for you. And we had some gentlemen who had invested 4 million, let's say, with their accountants. They'd worked with their accountants for 15 years, trusted them implicitly, and they'd been told that they were going to earn something like 9% a month on this investment, which to
And was
me,
this into loans, or what was
this
the underlying investment that they'd made?
they had just put their cash in to the accountants who were,
Oh, so they'd invested in the firm.
they'd invested in, I actually don't think they even had that detail. I think it was kind of
Wow.
a bit,
It's a
they'd
lot of money to invest
been their
blind, isn't it?
accountant. They were going to give them a 9% return on their money a month. Just mad figures. So they brought this to me and I said, this is ringing massive alarm bells. We'll send a demand. If they don't pay by this date, we need to go for it. And they were like, oh, no, we trust these people. And I was like, we really have to go. Anyway, in the end, they did push the button after I made it very, very clear that they were going to be at the back of the queue if they didn't. We ended up getting judgment against them, and we actually got a worldwide freezing order, and we got restrictions and charging orders on all their homes. So they had 4 homes. I think they had one in the wife's name and one in their name. And when it came out, they had done this to circa £100 million worth of clients. So the fraud was huge. And my clients were the only ones that got paid out.
Amazing.
It was such a sad story because you had wives who had trusted these accountants. They were widows and the husband's money had been invested with them and they'd lost everything. But by the time the official receiver's office got onto it, so the insolvency service, obviously it had all gone and it had all been dissipated, whereas we had these tangible property assets, which, let's all face it, that's the best way to secure anything.
Yeah.
So I was paid, they were paid, and I was in a situation where I set up to go back to my journey where obviously I didn't know what was going to happen with me. I did take around 170 cases when I left from Together in terms of their litigation work, which was amazing. But having this huge case that I did meant that, well, the first day Lauren and I raised our first bill in the practice, which was, we sent a bill out for 20,000, which for me back in 2014 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
low overheads, I guess, really, because
No
you were a
overheads.
small business. You didn't really have anything. Yeah.
Lauren and I, small office in Winslow. And within an hour, 2 hours, it was paid.
Such a nice feeling, isn't it? You log into the bank and you see it there and you think, this is mine, I've done this.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then I just thought, because up until that point, and that was very early, I just remember every morning getting ready to go into the office thinking, right, if I don't make a single fee, I can carry Lauren and I for a year. And, I had a bigger team at the time and there was a girl that worked for me who was fantastic. And I said, listen, I can't commit to you, so you've got this job offer. It was DLA. And I said, just go do that, get your experience. I said, and, hopefully this thing will thrive and then you can come back. And she did come back. But at the time, it's such a massive pressure. Is this actually going to work? And I remember just thinking of my bank account doing that. That situation happened. And it just meant from there on in that the type of work I do, and I think the reason how I've distinguished myself is people don't like paying when they can't see results. And a lot of the stuff I do, they're already out. They're already, it was a bad loan or there's a contract that's gone wrong or they've lost money somehow. So to keep spending on it when they're not seeing results, it just really pains them. So I've always come up with a way, you know, depending on the deal, right, let's see how we can work this out between us. But just having that case that went so well with the clients from London, it meant that I wasn't desperate to anybody paying a bill, and nobody could kind of look at what I was doing as a startup and think, oh, we know she's just started up. She's going to be desperate for this fee to pay.
Yeah, you actually started with a pipeline, didn't you?
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic position to be in, because most people don't start with that and they have to go and find it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it all segued really nicely.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we gradually built the team, got busier and busier. Different lenders would come to us when they heard what we were doing, and had various proposals to kind of be bought out at different times. But I just really didn't want to go back into the big law firm situation. Maybe in 2017, there was 6 of us. And now 2025, I think there's 28. So, yeah, the more we had these relationships with lenders and they could trust us, and could see how proactive we were and our communication, which is just key in what we do, we then started to win the front end work. And that has just...
So now, as a business, do you do more front end than you do back end?
Yeah.
You do? Okay, that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
And how have you found that transition? Have you personally enjoyed it? Is that something that now you're pleased to be on the other side of the fence?
Well, we still do the litigation recovery work, because obviously with all the front end work that we do for lenders, the lenders trust us with the back end. And I think they do, like you were discussing earlier, they like the fact that we can see the front and the back end deal. So for instance, one of my girls that's worked with me for about 12 years, she had years of experience with me at the back end and saw all the issues come up in court in front of the judges, how they looked at things, you know, different rates and renewal fees and everything, how it was worded in the documents. And now she's front end transactional work and she's doing phenomenally well at that. So for me personally, yeah, it's, do you know, I think the front end work is very positive. Everybody is really focused about getting a development off the ground, and, you know, it's very positive part of the transaction, isn't it? Whereas the back end, it's things have gone wrong and we're looking at all the different ways of recovery. I'm lucky that the lenders I work with do adopt a really sensible, fair approach. Basically, if you work with us and make some effort to cooperate, we'll work with you. But it's when people just bury their head, keep living their life and their lifestyle, and don't think they owe the lender.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the media didn't really help, you know, when we've had past media about bankers and all the rest of it, and banks are baddies and all this type of thing. It's like, well, actually, no, you've had that cash in your bank and you've used it.
Well, I suppose the foundation of it all is there's a contract, right?
Yeah.
So if you sign a contract and you agree to something, then the lender has every right to enforce the contract as per what's written in there. And I think it's then clear for everyone. No one's trying to vary that, presumably.
Yeah. And that's really, for me, I do feel quite spoiled with the work I do, because exactly what you say, there's a contract and it's very clear. You know, sometimes people approach me with litigation and it's oral agreements or, you know, emails going back and forth and uncertainty. And actually, I think in a lot of situations, a lot of friendships, a lot of families, sometimes they don't actually govern it with a contract, thinking, oh, we all trust each other, we're all friends. Like, you're not friends. When money's involved, it goes wrong unless everybody's clear on how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think it's very easy for people to fall into that trap, but you've seen it go wrong too many times, I guess. And one thing I'm keen to understand is then, so you predominantly do lender work. So do you do client work on the front end as well, or does it tend to be lender only?
We do act for
Yeah,
some
you do
developers
some
as
clients
well.
as well. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So you've got quite a global view then of
Yeah.
all of it. You've sort of acted across the whole triangle. So when a borrower is entering into a loan, obviously in most scenarios, they have their own solicitor as well.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can become quite fraught, can't it? And
Yeah.
it can be really challenging. Why do you think that goes wrong? Like, what do you think we can do to try and make that whole process just a little bit more amicable and joined up? Because ultimately, the outcome that we're all trying to achieve is a successful completion for client and lender, and then a successful journey thereafter. So are there any like bits of those components that you think that we need to really address?
For me, I've always, when I've ever picked up a new case, obviously it's back end, but when it goes wrong, but picking up the phone, you know, I think we rely too much now on email. And I think
Couldn't agree
actually
more.
having an initial call,
Building a bit of
right,
rapport.
we're both working on this together. I want to ensure this is good security for the loan for my client. You want to ensure your client can develop this land and use it how they want. We're actually doing the same thing. Because if my due diligence and I don't check off my boxes, the reality is that your client's going to come unstuck because they're not going to be able to exit when they want, and it's going to be costly for them. And I think having that conversation at the outset, because I do feel I'm very lucky with my team. We have a number of people that have worked actually in-house with lenders. They understand lenders. I've also got all the back end people who have kind of got the multifaceted with the skill set. But sometimes you come across property solicitors who are property solicitors and they're dabbling. They don't quite get how it works in lending. So when we're asking for things, they think we're being difficult or just too onerous or, you know, I mean, we're dealing with a situation at the moment where there's been a fraud on a case where actually a solicitor was embedded in both the borrower's firm and the seller's firm. And he had an interest in both. We were taking warranties and undertakings from the borrower's firm. We were asking for vendors' certificates on the identity of the vendor. But you get a lot of pushback. You know, law firms are like, why are we giving you this? You know, we'll carry out our own checks. We're solicitors. You should take our word. And you should be able to. But it's like, if this protects all of us, why wouldn't we just do it? Because unfortunately, there are people out there who will look to commit fraud. And actually, it's not really about us getting one up on each other. It's just about us trying to do the best to make this transaction safe for everybody. So I do think at the outset, you know, a call, trying to build up a bit of a rapport. It's always, I mean, you'll hear this, oh, it's with their solicitor. Oh, it's with their solicitor. And it's just like, guys, just get on the phone, find out what's missing, and let's just pull this deal together.
Yeah. And actually, as an intermediary, what we find is we get really involved in the legal process. So not all brokers do. Some just sort of leave it to tick along. But whenever I get the call, which is 50% of the time, to say the lender's lawyers are asking for ridiculous things and they're making the process really slow. And and I say, okay, no problem. Can we break that down? So I can't make a call and say, you're asking for too much, you need to ask for less, because what do you even do with that? But what is it that's being asked for? Why is it problematic? If it's something that you can answer and solve in 2 seconds flat, then just do it and humor them and let's not talk about it anymore. But if it's something, I mean, one thing that will come up time and time again is where they have to request information which is outside of their control. So it might be like ground rent and service charge, and they're relying on a third party and it's slow. Sometimes there's other ways to deal with it. And I think for you guys, I guess you're always asking, you want to protect your client. So you're asking for what you need to see in an ideal world, but there might be something that just suffices that sits below that. So rather than just being frustrated with the process, we always say to people, tell us what's causing you a problem. Let us see if we can then find a solution that makes the lender comfortable enough that you can provide within the timescales. And I think that's the bit that almost is missing. You get the, well, why do you need this? And rather than trying to find a solution, people are very quick to just point out the problem, which doesn't really do anyone any favors, does it?
No. And, we'll have, we've had so many situations when it's gone wrong in litigation, and nobody would ever have foreseen that what we asked for, what we now ask for, we could have asked for them, but we didn't. So, especially the lenders, especially working with brokers like yourself, we all want the deal to happen. The quicker my guys get the deal through and completed, the better for me. So everybody's on the same team. And I do think that's why we are different, because of our experience. Unfortunately, sometimes it is, I feel sometimes we do get pushback when we have maybe solicitors that are a bit defensive. They don't quite understand why we're asking.
Do you think that's an experience thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
100%.
that's one of the problems that we come across time and time again, where a borrower has a solicitor and you're looking at their credentials and their experience, and you think this is a solicitor they've known a long time and they might be a really good family generic solicitor. But actually, if they haven't got experience in the niches of the market that they're operating in, it can really slow the transaction down. And I think choosing the right solicitor is actually key for borrowers and how to make that journey smoother. Is there any advice that you would give on how a customer can make that selection? Is it like, how do they find those people in the market?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this myself the other day, because obviously it's all about independent advice, isn't it? That there not be a conflict. But I don't think there would be any issue with there being a list of that we generated between us of solicitors that we have worked with, and we've just smashed that deal out. We've worked as a team. Everybody's cooperated. Yes, there's been issues, which, there are those solicitors out there. And when we get one, fantastic.
Yeah.
And actually, just obviously you say there's no obligation, but one of these guys, if you use them, we will probably get this deal done very quick with Graphene. But yeah, for us, it can be really tricky when you have people that they are defensive because of experience sometimes. And my guys, they will go above and beyond to explain and go through things and explain why. But again, it's if they don't have the confidence in it themselves, it does slow down a transaction.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to a customer when entering into a loan agreement? I mean, let's sort of hone in on short-term finance, so bridging development funding. What advice would you give to customers to look out for? Obviously, having seen things go wrong at the back end, is there any pieces of advice that you could offer to a customer to really make sure that they've checked their facts or been diligent on?
Yeah. So obviously actually go to the site, walk around it. Have we got any problem neighbours? Is there anything going on there? You wouldn't believe some of the nuisance. Or I had a client once who was developing a site, and he had a lady who would lay down in front of the bulldozers when they were trying to do the right of way to I think there were 6 beautiful houses being built. I mean, it's just
unusual.
This is really extreme stuff, and usually the stuff is extreme that I deal with because it.
And actually, in some scenarios, things like that, you probably can't legislate for that because it's a unique situation.
But in this situation, there were the easement, the right of way was going through their garden, which they'd bought.
Right.
So I do think maybe if some conversations had been had with the neighbours, which then actually gave us witness evidence that we took to court in the end, they told us this woman was an interesting lady.
Mm.
So, obviously that is a very extreme case. Planning, don't underestimate how long planning can take,
Really good advice.
because I don't see it as much now, but I'd say maybe 2010, 11, 12, the amount of people that were taking out finance and not understanding that planning was not going to come in 6, 7 months. That was that really hurt a lot of people. Cash flow, don't underestimate how much things cost with builds.
Mm-hmm.
When you go into the ground when building a property, you discover all different types of issues that crop up that you
Yeah.
were not aware of. You might have done the investigations and all the rest of it at the start, but always put in a contingency because it will always take longer. If you're developing, always use a project manager, quantity surveyor. Sometimes I think people come along and the market is so much more sophisticated now. The lending is so much more sophisticated now. But back in the day when these roles didn't really play a part, it was
Mm-hmm.
catastrophic.
Yeah.
And the amount of times I would see drawdowns happen and actually what works happened, what we're drawing down against. But for the developers themselves, it actually saves them money in the long run. If they go in default 1 or 2 months, obviously they need to factor in the cost of interest and look at the loan, the bridging loan, as an employee.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it as a cost of the project. Don't look at it as negative. If you want that plot of land and you can see the profit in that plot of land and you want that plot of land tomorrow and you've got the relationship with the lender that you can make that work, well, go, but be realistic and factor in the cost as a cost of the project. And sometimes I don't think people really do that.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of see it, obviously, it's a burden, it's an obligation, but it's put the whole thing into context. But unbelievably, that's when you see deals fall over, when they try and save money at the start, but they come unstuck at the end.
Yeah, and I suppose a great deal of what you see actually it happens to good people, right? Not
Oh,
everyone's
yeah.
out there to cause a problem or, obstruct the lender. Sometimes things just happen. And
Hmm.
I suppose from our perspective, good advice all round is crucial to make sure that people make these decisions properly at the outset because it can shape their whole future, can't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's really sad when you see the things go wrong. But as I say, I do think everybody has become more sophisticated in how we do things.
Yeah.
Um, I do think everything is a lot better, a lot more thorough. Since and after COVID, I feel like valuations are a lot more accurate.
Hmm.
Um, we've learnt a lot of lessons, I'd say, in the last 10 years. And I think that as it always should be, as it always should have been, you are dealing now with the sophisticated property investor or developer. Whereas before, I do think we had a lot of people not taking it seriously. And, you know, it is, it's an amazing way to make a lot of profit. And it always will be, but it has to be done diligently and properly.
Yeah, like anything, those that are the most professional end of the market will usually prevail.
Yeah, 100%.
One thing actually that I wanted to cover today was looking back on your career. Obviously, you've had a really interesting career and you've had some twists and turns. What advice would you give to young lawyers that might be interested in the property sector specifically?
So it they need to stand out now more than ever. So solicitors generationally, I feel that kind of our generation, I'm older than you, Our
By Matt.
generation, we were in the crowd that we'd be in the office for 7. I wouldn't leave the office till 1:00. I'd be working all weekend.
Huge work ethic. Yeah.
My boss emailed me on a weekend, I'd be on my laptop.
It's almost become a little bit unpopular, that, hasn't it? I think the work-life balance movement, if you like, where people are focused much more on like lifestyle and health and mental health and things like that, has definitely made a lot of the younger people coming into the market a bit dubious about that way of working.
Yeah. And, you cannot sugarcoat it. As a lawyer coming in as a junior, if you want to get on and learn and develop, it takes a lot of time, because when we work for you or lenders, you expect speed.
Of course.
So the reality is that, one of my highly trained people would take 10 minutes to do it. But a junior who wants to have a go, it might take them 5 hours. I say to everybody in my business, if you want to become a lawyer, you need to understand this.
Knowledge is power, isn't it?
Yeah, understand it, read about it. Why are we doing what we're doing? Don't just fill in a form or copy somebody else's. No, you don't.
You
do
still
that.
see that grip. Do you have younger
I do,
people?
yeah.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, I do. And for instance, one of my girls who's a trainee solicitor, just the weekend gone, we had a lady who was filing injunctions left, right, and centre. A loan had gone wrong. We obtained a judgment, and we're selling properties in auction. And we've tried to deal with this guy for well over a year. We've entered into settlement agreements. He's not honoured anything. I think now the guy's just thrown 20 grand at a solicitor and said, stop, make their life hell. So, literally going to court over the weekend. And, my girl with me was working on it all weekend, to the point where I had to say, stop now, because I could tell this solicitor was not going to get anywhere with the judge, because it was all ridiculous
so it
what
became
she was
pointless
doing.
then.
But the point was, she just had such fire and passion, and that's what I look for. So in terms of, it's, if you're asking a more senior person within the business to train and develop you, when they give you a job to do, that is work for them, because 9 out of 10 you're not going to get it right. So that work's going to then you're going to have to train them and develop them. And if you've just made a 20% effort at it and not 110, the person won't use you again. Your development will stunt. So when people come to work for me, and I do take people on at the junior level a lot, and I do say, if you impress and if you work hard, there is an opportunity for a training contract and to qualify. And some people come in and don't, and that's fine, and they'll do their job that they want to do, and lots of businesses need all different types of jobs. But the lawyers, or the trainee lawyers who are going to come in and, give me that 110%, they do really, really well with us. I'm really, really proud of the team. But now, because of AI and all these different systems that are coming into play, they've really, really got to get moving and take on as much information, as much skill set, as much commerciality. Because the reality is, I don't think AI is going to take over, people like myself that have got all the experience, all the knowledge, and the actual practical hands-on experience. Whereas for those juniors coming up through, a lot of the jobs in 5-10 years, I think they'll be gone.
Really?
Yeah, I do. For
Interesting,
juniors.
actually. That's one of the things I wanted to cover today on the AI front. How are you implementing that, if at all? And what do you think it can do for your business?
We're doing loads of it. So We probably maybe a year, 18 months ago, maybe a year actually, I investigated what was out there for kind of law firms. And I did find an AI package which has been constructed by top property lawyers, and it will help us generate reports. Now, the way that it works, not yourself, but say if I went and asked, I don't know, someone off the street, highly intelligent person, but somebody off the street to do a report on title for a lender, they could not do it because they don't know what to put into it to get the answers out. So you do have to be knowledgeable and experienced. What it does is, for instance, when you've got a 200-page lease to read, which we would have to read that cover to cover, it will do that. It's basically like having a really good second-year trainee.
And can you fully trust it? Like, can it make mistakes?
Yeah.
Can you rely on it?
It makes mistakes.
That's what I worry about.
Yeah. So that's what I mean by a second-year trainee. So you
Fine.
would always check it. And one of the tools that
So where's the benefit then? If someone, it does the work for you, it summarizes it, but then you have to check it anyway.
So
where's the time saving?
So the time saving is because we will have key issues within a lease that we have to look at, and we can click on the answer that the lender will have asked. We can click on the answer and it will take us to the exact part of the lease that says.
Okay.
And so it will go tick, tick, and then within seconds we're at the relevant part of the lease.
So it's just a bit quicker.
Yeah. But sometimes when we read it, we're like, that interpretation just isn't quite right. But I'd say 70% it is correct. So it will definitely be saving time, but totally it's a first draft. It isn't, it isn't a 5-year qualified lawyer. We're also looking to develop within our case management system. Obviously, we're really lucky with the lenders we work with, like West One, that despite the dips in interest rates and all the volatility and the rise in interest rates, we have really had great performance constantly because we just, the lender is constantly being super innovative with the products that they're putting out there. So, for instance, now we have just probably in the last 9 months started doing a lot of the residential work, which obviously historically we're a backbook recoveries litigation firm. Then we've kind of done the front end securitization, bridging development, and now we're developing on the resi side. And the resi work is completely different because of the types of people that are buying properties.
Much more box ticky, isn't it?
It is, but I think people think it's a lot more straightforward than it is. And because of the extra regulation and all the rest of it, and, these people want their hand holding. They're buying the first property. It's their main family asset. It's very personal and emotional to them. So as a business, it's all about managing the communication. And so we are investing a lot in how we can make that communication slicker and better. And these systems now, these AI systems, I mean, it blows my mind. I leave IT to it, but they can literally pull and look within your case management system, look at what the last email was sent, what was said, what we're waiting on. They can review a contract and answer questions. It's incredible.
Gonna look very different soon, isn't
Yeah.
it?
But on, the residential work, because it is a lot more, the fees aren't there on the resi work. So I need to come up with a way that makes that type of work more efficient. Because at the moment, I can't employ 10 people to pick up the phone constantly to people on a deal where we're charging £500 plus VAT.
Yeah, and that's obviously just the pressure from fees because you're dealing with end users, and that it's not a transaction to make money. It's their home, and therefore there's more sensitivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Tricky.
the team that I have, and, it's head up by one of my fantastic girls that work for me, Danielle, who just works tirelessly, and she's so passionate about it. She will do everything to make sure that person has their house when they want it. And so she's very personally invested in it, and she brings that out throughout her team. So my hope is that if I can get the AI side of it, and as well, automation of documents, which is a bit boring compared to all the rest of the sophisticated AI stuff. If we can get that side slicker, then they'll have more time to kind of have more contact with Danielle or Emma or the different people in the team. Whereas at the moment, obviously, it's a lot of work on these transactions, which isn't really justifiable.
Kerry, thank you. That has been really interesting. I think we could talk all day, but we're going to have to call it a day for now, because otherwise I think people might get fed up of listening to us. But thank you so much. Honestly, it's really interesting to see your story and how you've come through the industry and created this amazing law firm. Thank you for sharing it with us today. And for everybody that's listening, thank you for listening to The Specialist Scoop, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks.